Now that we've learned the 3 Spanish conjugations, we are going to actually learn how to conjugate the verbs in the present of indicative. So all of the regular verbs in Spanish in the present of indicative. So the first thing that you would like to learn is that regular verbs are regular because we don't need to make any changes to the stem of the verb. The stem of the verb is the basis of the word, and that's once you learn that, you can then conjugate the verb in any tense. So in this lesson, we are going to focus on the present of indicative, but once you learn the basic form of the verb, so the stem, you will be able to conjugate the verb in any other tense, in the past, the future, the conditional, the subjunctive, and all those tenses in the Spanish language. So as you can see on the slide, the stem of the verb is highlighted in green. So for example, for the verb hablar, to talk, the stem is HABL. So that will be the basis of that word from where you can then conjugate all of the tenses in the Spanish language. In this lesson, we're going to focus on the present of indicative, so we can go step by step. So we've got those verbs that we learned in the previous slide, so you can start familiarizing with those verbs and the meaning. And let's have a look at the pronunciation as well in here. I'm going to give you a very good tip when it comes to pronunciation and the R at the end of the infinitive. So I'm going to read the list of verbs so that you hopefully you get the consistency on how we pronounce all of the infinitives in the Spanish language. Hablar, viajar, trabajar, cantar, aprender, comer, beber, leer, compartir, vivir, escribir, recibir. So hopefully you've heard what the consistency is. And the tip in here is that all of the words that end in consonant in the Spanish language, the stress, when you pronounce the word, the stress falls on the last syllable. So that's how every infinitive in the Spanish language is going to be pronounced. So in the word, for example, hablar, the stress falls on the last syllable, which is blar. So, and that's going to work for all across the board for all of the infinitives in the Spanish language. So I'm going to read that again, and hopefully you can hear a little bit more about that consistency that I'm talking about, and the pronunciation of the single R, which is just very, very soft, and the difference between the single R and the double R in Spanish is simply the amount of air that you let out from your throat. It's got nothing to do with anything else, going around in your mouth, your lips, or your tongue. Is simply the amount of air that you let out from your throat. For a single R is very, very soft, very little air. And for the double R is a little bit more air. And that's all it takes to pronounce the single R and the double R. But we are going to focus on that on some other lesson. But I'm just going to give you that tip ahead of time. So I'm going to read that list again, and hopefully you get all that good information in. Hablar, viajar, trabajar, cantar, aprender, comer, beber, leer, compartir, vivir, escribir, recibir. And hopefully you can also notice that, in the first lesson, we focused on the pronunciation of the Spanish vowels, A, E, I, O, U, but when it comes to pronunciation, they need to be vocalized very clearly so that the listener knows the word that we are pronouncing. We've learned two important things about the Spanish verbs and also in particular about the Spanish regular verbs. So to conjugate verbs in Spanish, the best thing to do is to learn the infinitive of the word. And the second thing specifically about Spanish regular verbs is that when we conjugate these words, nothing needs to change in the stem of the word. So here, the stem of the word is highlighted in green, as you can see there, and the ending of the conjugation is highlighted in blue. So we have also learned in previous lessons what the personal pronouns are in Spanish. Here on the left-hand side of your screen, you've got yo, tú, él, ella, usted for the singular, and then the plurals, we've got nosotros, nosotras, vosotros, vosotras, ellos, ellas, ustedes. So let's go ahead and conjugate the regular verbs in the Spanish present of indicative. So the process is very, very simple. All we need to do is drop the ending of the conjugation and add the correct ending that belongs to the personal pronoun. So how does that work in practical terms? So if we got the verb to travel, viajar in Spanish, all we need to do is drop the ending AR, and for the first person of the singular, yo, we just need to add the ending O. So to say I travel, yo viajo. So that works for every single verb in the regular form of the regular verbs in the Spanish language in the present of indicative. So as such, if I want to say I sing, I would say yo canto. If I want to say I work, I would say yo trabajo. And if I want to say I talk, yo hablo, and so on and so forth. Let's have a look at the ending of the second person of the singular. Tú viajas. So you need to drop again the AR and add AS. So you travel, tú viajas. You talk, tú hablas. You sing, tú cantas. And you work, tú trabajas. So it's as simple as that. And let's have a look at the endings for the third person of the singular and then the plurals. So él, ella, usted viaja. Nosotros, nosotras viajamos. Vosotros, vosotras viajáis. Ellos, ellas, ustedes viajan. So this is the conjugation for the present of indicative in the Spanish language for all of the regular verbs that belong to the first conjugation ending in AR. Yo viajo, tú viajas, él viaja, nosotros viajamos, vosotros viajáis, ellos viajan. Let's have a look at the second conjugation. So regular verbs ending in ER. So we've got the verb to eat, comer. So that's your infinitive. So what are the endings for each of the subjects? Again, drop the ending ER and add the correct ending for each of the subjects. So if I want to say I eat, yo como. So O is the ending for yo again. So that's all across the board, as you can see probably along the line in there, along that row. The present of indicative for the subject yo is going to be O all across for regular verbs. So, and then second person of the singular, you eat, tú comes. Él, ella, usted come. Nosotros, nosotras comemos. Vosotros, vosotras coméis. Ellos, ellas, ustedes comen. So the endings for the present of indicative for verbs belonging to the second conjugation, ER, is O, S, E, hemos, eis, en. And if you learned Latin in school or in college, you will be familiar with how you can memorize the endings for the conjugations in the Spanish language. And then we move on to the third conjugation. So verbs ending in IR, like for example, vivir. To say I live, yo vivo, tú vives, él vive, nosotros vivimos, vosotros vivís, ellos viven. So the second and the third conjugation are very, very similar, but notice that the first person of the plural, nosotros, nosotras, the ending for ER is hemos, and the ending for IR is imos. And then the second person of the plural, vosotros, vosotras, the ending for ER is eis, and the ending for IR is is. So they are very, very similar. And I would like to highlight here again the pronunciation of your vowels. So you can always review the material in lesson 1 on how we pronounce the Spanish vowels, because when it comes to conjugate verbs, that is an important part of the pronunciation and the speaking part. So those are the endings. This is the conjugation table for the present of indicative for regular verbs in the Spanish language. Now that we know how to conjugate verbs in the present of indicative in Spanish, let's have a look and see how all that information comes together in context with some very good examples. Remember that the basic structure of any sentence in Spanish is the same as the English language. So you've got subject plus verb plus complement. And you can see that, for example, in the first sentence, if we take I travel to Spain every year, we've got the subject, I, the verb, travel, and then the complement, to Spain every year. The complement can be just about anything. And we will dig into that topic much farther in next lessons. But for now, we're just going to stay there and see how it works all together. And this is how you can start building up on your speaking skills in the Spanish language. So I travel to Spain every year in Spanish. If you wanted to say that, yo viajo a España todos los años. And notice how that structure is all across these examples on this slide. I don't speak German. Yo no hablo alemán. Remember how if you want to deny a verb in Spanish, a simple form to do that is to add the no before the verb. So yo no hablo alemán. You work at the weekends. Tú trabajas los fines de semana. You don't drink alcohol. Tú no bebes alcohol. Charles works and lives in Madrid. Carlos trabaja y vive en Madrid. You write and receive a text message. Usted escribe y recibe un mensaje de texto. We sing in a choir. Nosotros cantamos en un coro. We eat paella and drink red wine. Comemos paella y bebemos vino tinto. You speak Chinese. Vosotras habláis chino. You don't read crime novels. Vosotras no leéis novelas negras. They always travel to England. Ellos siempre viajan a Inglaterra. Where do you live? ¿Dónde viven ustedes?